Properties of real numbers. The first property we're going to go over is the commutative property. The commutative property changes the order. That's the important part. Take a look at the commutative property for addition. A plus B equals B plus A. Notice the order changes. Same thing for multiplication. A times B equals B times A. So the important part about the commutative property is that the order changes. That means that you are allowed to change the order when you're adding or multiplying, and you're still going to get the same answer. So if you have a problem like 4 plus 5, that's equal to 9. It's the same thing as saying 5 plus 4. That's also equal to 9. If you have something like 4 times 5, then that's going to be the same as saying 5 times 4, in which case they're both equal to 20. So that's what the commutative property says. The associative property changes what's in parentheses. Now, be careful. Not just because you see parentheses, it's going to be the associative property. But what's in parentheses has to change. So the associative property of addition, notice first we have A plus B, it's in parentheses, and then you're adding it to C. And that is the same as if you were to regroup, okay? You're basically regrouping, and you're going to put the B plus C in a group and add those first and then add it to A. So in other words, it's not commutative because the order did not change. A, B, C, A, B, C. That order has not changed at all. Instead, what's changing is you're adding, but what you're adding is going to get regrouped, okay? Same thing for multiplication, because these are properties of real numbers for addition and multiplication. They do not work for subtraction or for division. They're only for addition and multiplication. So notice the associative property, I'm going to regroup. So A times B times C, I can also go A times and then put B times C together first. So that's the associative property. Commutative property, you change the order. Associative property, you're basically regrouping them, but the order stays the same. The identity property. The identity property is basically asking you what number can you add by to get back the same number. And you all know that if you add 0 to any number, you get back the same number. So 0 is what we call the additive identity. So any number plus 0 or 0 plus any number gives me back the same number. The multiplicative identity, what number would you multiply by to get back the same number? So in this case, that is 1. If you multiply by 1 to any number, you're going to get back the same number. So that is called the multiplicative identity. So 5 times 1 is the same as 1 times 5, which is just 5. 10 times 1 is the same as 1 times 10, which is just 10. Okay? So multiplicative identity is when you multiply by 1. The additive identity is when you add 0 because you get back the same thing. Now, the inverse property is how do you get back the identity? So for addition, what do you have to add to the number to equal 0? Because 0 is the identity. And the answer is the inverse, which is the same number but opposite sign. So for positive 5, I would have to add negative 5, and that would equal 0. So that is called the additive inverse. The additive inverse is whatever you have to add to get the 0, which is basically the same number but opposite sign. For multiplication, you're trying to get back also the identity, but the identity for multiplication is 1. So the inverse is when you flip the number. So the multiplicative inverse of, let's say, 3 would be 1/3, because 3 is the same as 3 over 1. So the reciprocal, when you flip it, is going to be 1/3. That's the inverse. And then when you multiply those, it's equal to 1, because 3 over 1 times 1/3, the 3's basically cancel and you're left with 1. The zero property for multiplication says if I multiply by 0 to any number, then my answer is going to be 0. So 0 multiplied to any number is going to give me 0, no matter what. The distributive property, I feel like most students know pretty well. It's when you have one number outside of parentheses and that number is going to get multiplied to everything inside of the parentheses. So for example, if I have A parentheses B plus C, this means that I have to distribute, that means multiply A times B and then A times C. So that equals AB plus AC. Or if I have it the other way, where I have the parentheses B plus C first multiplied by A, I still distribute B times A and C times A to equal BA plus CA. That's the same thing. And then finally, the last property that we have is called substitution. In substitution, literally, you're just replacing one value for the other. So it says if A is equal to B, then you can obviously substitute A for B or B for A. So let's take a look at some examples to see how you do. Identify the property illustrated. In number 1, 14 times 0 equals 0. So this tells me that no matter what, if I multiply by 0, I get 0. Which one do you think this is? This is the 0 property. The 0 property tells us that when you multiply by 0, no matter what number you multiply, you're always going to get back 0. Take a look at number 2. 1/5 times 5 is equal to 1. 1/5 times 5 is equal to 1. 1/5 and 5, they are reciprocals of each other. They're inverses of each other, and we're multiplying. So this is the multiplicative inverse property. So this is the multiplicative inverse property. Take a look at number 3. We have parentheses x plus y plus z equals x plus parentheses y plus z. Now, just because you see parentheses, don't automatically assume it's going to be associative. You remember that associative, you're going to be regrouping. So let's take a look at number 3. Is the order the same? So x, y, z, x, y, z. Yes, in fact, the order is the same. So that means that this is not the commutative property because the order did not change. And yes, in fact, we are regrouping. So instead of x plus y, I'm grouping y plus z, and the order has stayed the same. So this is the associative property of addition. So this is the associative property. In question number 4, notice we also have parentheses, and it does look like it is also associative, but let's check to see if the order has changed. We have x plus y plus z, z plus x plus y. So the order has changed. Now let's look to see what is actually in groups. In the first group, I have x plus y. In the second group, I also have x plus y. So what's in parentheses actually has not changed. What has changed is the order. So this is actually the commutative property of addition. So be very careful because some people automatically see parentheses and they assume it's always going to be associative. The associative property regroups whatever is in parentheses. This is not regrouping. This is literally changing the order. What is in parentheses has not changed at all. In question number 5, I also see a parentheses, but only on the left-hand side, and I am basically distributing. So this one's pretty easy. It is the distributive property. Let's take a look at number 6. Negative 24 plus 24 equals 0. So in this case, I have negative 24 plus 24. they're the same number but opposite signs, and they equal 0, which is the identity for addition. So this means that this property being illustrated is going to be the additive inverse. This is the additive inverse property. In number 7, 340 times 1 equals 340. So you're taking a number, you're multiplying it by 1, and you're getting back the same number. This property is the multiplicative identity. This is the multiplicative identity property. In number 8, we have negative 87 plus 0 equals negative 87. So I'm taking a number, I'm adding it to 0, and I'm getting back the same number. So this is the additive identity. Hope you found this video helpful. Remember to subscribe to my channel for more help with math so that you can say, yes, I can do math with confidence. Until next time, thanks for watching.